dwell in a house among his people. But now he has a home that's better than the first. It doesn't look like a building with a steeple. Now he's living in the people of the church. Brick after brick, God is building his temple. Brick after brick, he's making it strong. With Christ the sure foundation and his people as the stones, he is building a place he can live. Brick after brick.
Well, good morning, church. We are honored and privileged to be in the house of God once again. I want to share a thought with you this morning, and I'm going to be doing something a little different with the text. I'm going to be speaking on one particular story, a familiar story, but I'm going to be using two different texts, one from Mark and one from Matthew. The same story. The story is mentioned in all three synoptic gospels. Mark, even though it is the briefest of gospels, it actually gives the most information. But Matthew and Luke make unique contributions, important contributions. So I want to draw from two sources to get the text of our story. So let us start with the Gospel of Mark and the 9th chapter. And I'll be reading from the New King James Version, beginning at verse 14. And when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and scribes disputing with them. Immediately when they saw him, all the people were greatly amazed, and running to him, greeted him. And he asked the scribes, "What are you discussing with them?" Then one of the crowd answered and said, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who has a mute spirit. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not." He answered him and said, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me." Then they brought him to him, and when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him, and he fell to the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief." Turn into the Gospel of Matthew in the 17th chapter. The same story continuing, verse 18. Then Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" So Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." In Mark's Gospel, verse 23, and Jesus said to him, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. I want to speak this morning from the subject of when faith and doubt collide. When faith and doubt collide. As I said, this is a familiar story. It's one that we have spoken from and drawn from many times in the past. As we said, it's mentioned in all three of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And in all three of the synoptic gospels, this story always follows another famous story, the Mountain of Transfiguration. This pivotal event experienced by Peter, James, and John with Jesus when he revealed his glory, comes down from that event and comes across a heart-wrenching story of a man pleading for the healing of a demon-possessed son. And in this unique story, we discover that as much as the need was there, his disciples failed in delivering this boy. It was a miracle that did not happen. What may be strange is that his disciples, apostles, have done this before. Earlier in the 3rd chapter, we read, and he, Jesus, went up on the mountain and called to him those he himself wanted, and they came to him. Then he appointed 12, that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach, and to have power to heal sickness, and to cast out demons. So this wasn't their first crack at this. They've done this before. They've had success in healing people, success in casting out devils in the past. In fact, at one point, they were quite impressed with themselves at this ability. We read in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, then the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he, Jesus, said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. So they've done this before, but now, in this instance, it doesn't work. It fails. Something goes wrong. Matthew's gospel, we pick up, then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, why could we not cast it out? That certainly was the question. So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief. So Jesus makes it clear, this is a faith problem. This was a problem with your faith. Now, I pulled Matthew's gospel because he makes a contribution that causes some people perplexity and, I feel, a distraction. In verse 21, he says, however, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. So some may say, well then, there it is. It wasn't their fault. This was some kind of a super demon. It was above their pay grade. And so it really wasn't to be expected. And he includes that this comes out by prayer and fasting. Well, what's interesting is that Jesus cast him out. And Jesus neither prays nor fasts in doing so. So what does that mean? What Jesus is saying is that you need to be ready beforehand when these disasters and crises come upon you. Fasting. What's troubling is some people use fasting as sort of a hunger strike. You know, a hunger strike when someone's in prison? They say, I'm not going to eat anything until something happens. And you can use it as blackmail against God. I'm not going to eat until you do this. Or we think that it gives us an edge over the devil. And that is a mistake. The devil is not impressed or intimidated by your fasting. It's not like the demons start sweating because you decide to fast. Jesus fasted. We all know the story. Jesus in the wilderness. Then Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan River. He was led by the Spirit in the wilderness, where he was tempted by the devil for 40 days. Jesus ate nothing all that time and became very hungry. Jesus is fasting, but it's not scaring off the devil. In fact, then the devil said to him, if you are the Son of God, tell this stone to become a loaf of bread. Satan stepped up his game after 40 days of fasting. So fasting does not intimidate demons. What's the purpose of fasting then? The essence of fasting is in the discipline of telling yourself no. And it's not a matter of sacrificing yourself. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. The discipline of telling self no. It's not a matter of tormenting yourself. Fasting is not a matter of sacrifice. Fasting is a matter of consecration. Pulling your focus on the things of God. Pulling away from the things that pull on you. Pulling away from the things that distract you. It could be food. It could be social media. It could be pulling away from gossiping. Whatever it is that gets in your way, whatever it takes to get you out of the way so that God can deal with you. That's the essence of fasting. So he tells them, you couldn't do it because of your unbelief. Now he expounds on that. And he says, for surely I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Now, what is Jesus saying here? He actually used a similar analogy on another occasion. Then he said, to what shall I liken the kingdom of God? Or what parable shall we picture it? It is like a mustard seed, which when it is sown to the ground, is smaller than all the seeds of the earth. We're familiar with that analogy. What he says here is that you have a mustard seed faith, you could move a mountain. In other words, all you need is a small amount of faith to conquer tremendous crises and problems. And what Jesus is saying here is, you don't even have that. You don't even have enough to deal with this current crisis. It was a harsh rebuke. I want to speak this morning about some of the obstacles of faith. There are several in this story. So if we take this story verse by verse, and when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them and scribes disputing with them. So Jesus comes upon a scene and he finds them in an argument. They're fussing amongst themselves. They're in a debate. And who are they in a debate with? They're in a debate with scribes. Why scribes were there, we don't know. But somehow they end up in a confrontation with scribes. We don't know what the argument was about, but we can assume that it went around this event and what didn't occur. Now, Jesus spoke about the scribes in the chapter just before this. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Not only are they fussing with the scribes are out to kill Jesus. He tells them that these people, the scribes and the Pharisees, the chief priests, are coming after him. So why are they bothering debating them about anything? Not everything or everyone is deserving of your time. We spend so much time fussing and arguing with people over things that really shouldn't matter. Not every criticism, accusation, or offense requires a response. Instead of doing what they were called to do, instead of doing what they were empowered to do, they chose rather to debate, to argue. And he asked the scribes, "What are you discussing with them?" Then one of the crowd answered and said, "Teacher, I brought you my son who has a mute spirit." Now, we have several parties in this crowd here. We have the scribes, enemies and agitators of Jesus. We have the disciples, but neither one of them speak up when he asks what's going on. Now they have nothing to say. One speaks up out of this crowd, and it turns out to be the father of this son. Isn't it striking how we have so much to say when we disagree with something? Then we're quick to make our point known. Then we're quick to straighten somebody out, instead of talking to Jesus. This was the only one who decided, I'm going to tell Jesus what my problem is. Let your gentleness show in your treatment of all people. The Lord is near. Don't be anxious about anything. Rather, bring up all your requests to God in your prayers and petitions, along with giving thanks. What do we do when things bother us? Do we take it to Jesus, or do we post it on social media? Do we call up our friends, people who would agree with us, and spend a lot of time talking about what's bothering us? The story goes on. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I want to pause here because I said something that I often say, and it bears repeating, that this here was the result of a demon possession. It sounds obviously very much like epilepsy or seizure. And because of that, unfortunately, the church through the ages have often equated epilepsy as well as other diseases with demon possession. And of course, that is not the case. Epilepsy has nothing to do with demon possession. Sicknesses don't often have to do with demon possession. But in this particular story, it was the result of a demon. So please let us not be so foolish in thinking that every illness, every disaster, catastrophe, mental illness, or what have you, all tie back to demonic possession. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not. And he answered him and said, O faithless generation. Again, this is a faith problem. How long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me. Then they brought him to him, and when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him, and he fell to the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So here we have a very dramatic, frightening scene. The boy actually begins to convulse and foam and fall to the ground. And it makes it clear that it was the demon inside him that did this. Why did the demon do this? Why did the demon act out? Well, I believe it's because it worked before. That's what caused others to doubt. That's what caused others to be fearful. That's what caused others to back off from faith. That's what became and caused an obstacle to their faith. You've heard me speak many times about the occasion of Peter walking on the water. And some of you weren't here as I spoke on this in the past. So it bears repetition. Let's look at this story. It says, Matthew's Gospel 14, now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when his disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a ghost, and they cried out in fear. Notice they're witnessing a miracle, but the miracle doesn't stir up faith. The miracle, in fact, stirs up fear. Never think that if I only saw a miracle, I'd have all the faith in the world. We walk by faith, not by sight. We don't go by what we see. We go by what we know. So this miracle caused them fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. So Jesus makes it very clear, it's me. It's not a ghost. There's nothing to be afraid of. It is me. I am now here with you. Peter's response, and Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Jesus tells him, it's me. Peter's first response, if it's you. So now Peter is in a state of doubt. Before he gets out of the boat, he's already doubting. So he said, come. And Peter had come down out of the boat. He walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him. And he said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? He doesn't say, why'd you take your eyes off me? He doesn't say, why did you look at the wind and the waves? Because it was a faith issue. Because doubt will cause you to take your eyes off Jesus. Doubt will cause you to look at the waves and the storm. That's what happens here with this boy. Because they have doubt, they look to the disaster. That's an obstacle of our faith. We look to how bad things are. When you walk in doubt, you're always looking around at what's going wrong. You're always looking around at how bad things are. And these suppress your faith. Faith doesn't look to what's happening. Faith looks to what God can do. So they're looking at this boy in convulsion. And they're thinking, this is terrible. This is bad. Rather than looking that Jesus is now here. So he asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood. Another obstacle of faith is when we ponder how long we've been going through this. When we are plagued by thinking, this has been going on for a long time and nothing ever changes. I've been living with this problem for years. And that will wear on you when you're asking and seeking God. Exhaustion from your past can jeopardize the blessings of your future. Sometimes it's hard to let go of the pain that we've been carrying for a long time, the burdens that have been pulling on us, the memories that press down on us, and the frustration and dread that nothing ever changes. But God can take the pains of your past and turn them into victories for your future. Oh, hallelujah. He says from childhood, and often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Now, I like the way this version states it. The man says, if you can do anything. Jesus takes that and flips it right back on him and says, if you can believe. He says, if you can do anything. Jesus says, if you can believe. What stops us from mastering our faith? What stops us from conquering in our faith? Faith is not ignoring your problems. Faith is trusting in the problem solver. And Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. I read this and I think finally someone in the scriptures that I can identify with. You see, it's not always a question of having faith or not having faith. It's not a question of having faith or doubting. The Father lets us know that it's possible to believe, but doubt is often there anyway. Lord, I believe, but there's something inside me that's stopping me from believing. I believe, but doesn't mean I don't have doubts. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is what is used to defeat doubt. Having faith doesn't mean you never have any doubts. It's not either or. It doesn't mean that if I believe, I won't have doubts. You can still have doubts. You can still have confusion. You can still have burdens. You can still have fear. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is what is used to overcome fears. We walk by faith, but that doesn't mean we don't struggle with temptations. You can have faith and still have those plagues of doubt. Lord, I have faith, but there's something inside me that resists it. Lord, I have faith, but there's something inside me that won't let go. I have faith, I want to believe, but I still get scared sometimes. I have faith, but I still don't know what to do in every situation. Lord, help my unbelief. Help me conquer my fears. Help me conquer my loneliness. Help me conquer my anger and my frustration. Let my faith rise above, because there are times when your faith and doubt will collide with one another. And if you're not careful, if you're not prayerful, your doubt will win over. But if you can stand on faith, Lord, I still believe. I don't have the answers. I don't feel it in my bones, but I know that you're real. Lord, I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't know which way to turn. I feel like giving up. I'm up against the ropes, but let me stand on faith. Let me stand on the faith and believe that He's able to bring me out, that He's able to pick me up and turn me around. I'm standing on faith today. The devils can't bring me down because He's able. And even if He doesn't deliver me, even if He doesn't bring me out, He's still able. Stand on your faith.
Brick after brick, God is building His temple. Brick after brick, He is making it strong. With Christ the sure foundation